Provided you don't experience any game-breaking bugs, and assuming you can even get the game installed, Assassin's Creed is a repetitive but surprisingly enjoyable game that is definitely worth your time. The game follows two storylines, one set in the present day and another set in 1191 during the Third Crusade. The basic idea is that all memory is stored genetically, which is what Instinct is, and Desmond, a contemporary bartender, is kidnapped by some scientists who have traced his lineage all the way back to Altair, a master assassin. These scientists, who represent the obligatory evil multinational corporation, have a machine that will let them get inside Desmond's head to learn Altair's memories. While in the past, Altair's arrogance results in his demotion all the way down to the lowliest rank of the Assassin Order, and he is forced to work his way back up by assassinating 9 key people. These two storylines intertwine, and we find that the events of the past have a significant impact on the events of the present. It's not a great story, and not paying attention to it won't really detract from the experience, but it's well told through cinematic cutscenes which, with the one notable exception of the protagonist Altair, are all voiced superbly throughout. Altair's character pretty much reminds me of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. Every line feels awkward and forced, and there's a sort of teenage angst type thing that you really wouldn't expect from a professional assassin. The gameplay can essentially be split down into 3 different categories: free running, combat, and missions, but all 3 of these are seamlessly integrated into the large open cities in which the game takes place. Altair is extremely agile. He can climb up almost anything he can grab hold of. He can leap long but not unrealistic distances. He scrambles up walls and deftly runs along narrow rafters. You can climb on pretty much everything you can see, and it's a lot of fun just running around jumping on stuff. The most impressive thing about all this is the climbable objects really don't look like they were set out in a deliberate way for you to climb specific parts to get to specific areas, like Tomb Raider for instance. Altair's movement is fluid, and the way he climbs on things is organic. Both the design of the climbable objects and the way in which Altair navigates them seems completely natural. If you're a fan of parkour or freerunning, it's an especial pleasure to watch Altair climbing, jumping, and running around the environment. When a fight breaks out, you'll use a button to lock onto an enemy and then pretty much just mash the attack button repeatedly until your enemy goes down. If you're fighting multiple enemies, you'll have to make use of defensive measures and counter-attack moves, which allow you to take on several enemies with ease. When fighting multiple enemies, you'll find that even when completely surrounded and outnumbered, only one guard will attack you at a time. While this may have been necessary to keep the difficulty level reasonable, it makes the combat itself seem artificial. The combat is pretty spectacular to watch, but it's not particularly deep or enjoyable. But successfully pulling off a string of counterattacks can be very satisfying. But to be fair, Altair is an assassin, not a swordsman. You aren't particularly expected to go around starting fights as much as go around silently executing enemies with your retractable blade. You'll mostly only get into sword fights when you choose to. In addition to your main assassination missions, you'll have several side missions you can undertake, such as helping out citizens being harassed by guards, beating information out of people, or scaling lookout towers for a better view of the city. These missions are limited and repetitive, and after doing a few of each you'll probably find yourself skipping them where possible, or only doing them simply to get their marker off your map. The assassination missions are a little more challenging and interesting, but not much. Once you've found your target, you can assassinate them with your retractable blade or sword fight with them. Whichever method you choose, you are rewarded to a lengthy and unskippable cutscene where your target speaks at great length and with surprising lucidity for a man who's had a blade through his neck. Every so often you'll find yourself controlling Desmond again, back in the present. Here you can interact with a few objects in the game world, like a computer, and you can sometimes talk with the scientists. These scenes don't really add much to the game, and not being able to run makes them pretty frustrating. There are 4 cities in the game: Damascus, Acre, Jerusalem and Mesaf. While each city has its own look, The basic design of each is pretty similar, and you'll spend most of your time looking at rooftops anyway. The most impressive thing about the cities is its people. Each city is filled with an astounding number of people milling about. The size of the crowds is really quite spectacular. The way Altair weaves and wends his way through the people is pretty great looking. These people will comment on the things you do. If you run around, they'll ask why you're in such a hurry. If they see you climbing on things, they may call you childish or say it'll be funny if you get hurt. These little comments seem to add a lot of realism initially, but after hearing the same few lines over and over, it gets pretty tired. In these cities you'll also find vigilantes who will help you fight guards. You'll find wandering scholars you can use as cover, beggars who will harass you, and orators giving speeches on the political state of things. These speeches especially can be interesting to listen to, but like most other things in the game, they quickly become repetitive. Assassin's Creed is a beautiful game. There's really no other way of describing it. All of the buildings and character models look fantastic, and there's some great lighting and shadow effects. The draw distance is also quite wonderful. But most impressive of all is the animations. The way all of Altair's moves seamlessly work together is really just astounding, and it's an absolute pleasure to watch him move. Even the way he moves from a run into a walk is absolutely realistic. Assassin's Creed just sets a new standard for animations. The game controls surprisingly well. Altair is controlled with a familiar WASD setup, and you have 360 degrees mouse lock. The most impressive thing about the controls is the way you don't need to time your jumps or grabs. You just hold down the run and jump button and Altair will jump automatically when he's near something he can jump from, and he'll grab hold of anything he's near. This means you'll never find yourself frustrated by having to make tough jumps or by having poor timing, but it doesn't make you feel uninvolved either. You still have a very large degree of control over Altair's movements. Ultimately, Assassin's Creed goes for style over substance and quantity over quality. The missions are generic and repetitive. The combat is simple and rarely more nuanced than a button masher. Each of the two intertwining stories is either boring, unnecessary, or both, and exploring the game world yields nothing unless you're really into collecting stuff. The game also contains an alarming number of game-breaking bugs, even by Ubisoft standards. The game's greatest strengths are the excellent visuals, the beautiful organic world, the amazingly fluid animations, and the remarkable degree of freedom you have. Assassin's Creed is not going to be winning any Game of the Year awards, but it's definitely worth your time.